Good morning, Salem casters. It is Wednesday. It is the 14th of June, 2021, and this is our Wednesday online Bible study in the book of Acts. We're about ready to just wrap this up. This is our second to last Bible study. We're going to be talking about Acts chapter 27 this week, and looking forward to going through this with you this morning. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and let's get right to it. Okay. Paul sails for Rome. When it was decided that we would sail for Italy, Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to the centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. We boarded a ship from Adramyttium, about to sail for a port along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. Don't see too many Aristarchus. Don't see many of those names in the new baby section of the newspaper. But he was there as well. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so that they might provide for his needs. From there we put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus, because the winds were against us. When we had sailed across the open sea off the coast of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we were landed at Myra and Lycia. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. So Paul and, and I'm not going to say the name again, were transferred to another ship. We made slow headway for many days, and in the difficulty arriving off of Cyndius, when the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete, opposite Salone. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens near the town of Lasea. So Paul he's being moved from place to place on boats as he's moving on his way to Rome. And it's a long trip, and it seems to be a very difficult trip for no matter which ship he's sailing in. So difficult so that much time had been lost, and sailing had already become dangerous because now it was after the Day of Atonement. So Paul warned them, "Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to the ship and cargo, but to our own lives also." But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and of the owner of the ship. Paul saying, "I don't like the look of this, but he's a prisoner, so why should the centurion care what he has to say?" And followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. Bad idea. But at the time, who knows, we might have made the same decision. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter in, the majority decided that we should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. This was a harbor in Crete facing both southwest and northwest. The storm. When the gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity, so they weighed anchor and sailed along the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force called the Nor'easter, swept down from the island. The ship was caught up by the storm and could not head into the wind. So we gave way to it and were driven along. So there's this hurricane just pushing them along. As we passed to the lee of a small island called Claudia, we were hardly able to make the lifeboat secure. So the men hoisted it aboard. Then they passed the ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. They're literally putting ropes under the ship so that the boat will hold together in the storm. Scary and really, really scary to be out on the wind in a sailboat in that kind of a force. They held it together because they were afraid they would run aground on the sandbars of Cyprus. They lowered the sea anchor and let the ship be driven along. We took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day we began to throw cargo overboard. On the third day they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days, the storm continued raging. We finally gave up all hope of being saved. This is 3 days of just nothing but storm and wind and trying their very best just to survive, holding into the middle of the ship, hoping that they'll be able to survive this. Very, very scary, very, very intense situation for Paul and his people and the people on the board of that ship. Remember, he's a prisoner. What it doesn't say is Paul could have just said, "I told you so." But being a prisoner, that probably wasn't a good thing to do. After they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "I told you so. Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. But now I urge you to keep your courage, because not one of you will be lost. An angel of God to whom I belong and to whom I serve stood beside me." Okay, so John has another vision. And he says, "I urge you to keep your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. Last night he saw an angel of the God whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you. So keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that it will happen, just as he told me. Nonetheless, we must run aground on some island. God will take care of us, but we still have things to do. We've got to make the ship hit the island. Okay, we've got to run aground. We don't just stand there flailing saying, 'God save us,' and expect God to save us without us doing our part." That's an important scripture lesson. We, nonetheless, even though God will protect us, we must do our part and run aground on some island. The shipwreck. On the 14th night, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea, when about midnight the sailors sensed that they were approaching land. They took soundings and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings and found it was 90 feet deep. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from stern and prayed for daylight. So as they're getting closer and closer to shore, the bottom is coming up farther and farther, and they're worried about being crashed against the rocks, as many ships in a storm getting close to shore would feel that they need to worry about being close to the rocks. Excuse me, I turn on the lights again. There we go. Okay. Okay, now this is important. In an attempt to escape the ship, the sailors let the lifeboats down into the sea, pretending that they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. Then Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, "Unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved." So the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and let it drift away. The crew was going to save themselves and leave the prisoners and everybody behind. That was their part. Let them die. We're going to take the lifeboat and head to land, because we know that the lifeboat's not going to hit the rocks. It's shallow. The big boat will. But the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboat and let it drift away. Can't stop the soldiers who have swords. Just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you have been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you to take some food. You will need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. After he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God in front of them all. Then he broke it and began to eat. So he's showing them that he's going to eat. You might as well eat too. They were all encouraged and ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us aboard. Then they had eaten as much as they wanted. They lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Now, understand that in a boat, the lighter it is, the higher the draft. It pulls itself out of the sea. So the more weight that they took out of it, the higher the boat came to the surface, the bottom of the boat. So if this was the bottom of the boat, and this was the sea, and this was the sea, the lighter it is, the higher the boat comes, so it gets closer to shore. I think everybody understands that, but that's why they threw away their food. They knew that they would be going to shore very soon. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea. At the same time, untied the ropes that held the rudders. When they hoisted the foresail to the wind to make for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken into pieces by the pounding of the surf. So the front of the boat was stuck, the back of the boat was broken into pieces. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent any of them from swimming away and escaping. Okay. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. He ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The rest would get there on planks or on other pieces of the ship. In this way, everyone reached land safely. I've seen lots of movies where shipwrecks, where people holding on to planks and things and finally making it to the beach, coming up and kind of collapsing on land. That's exactly what happened to Paul. And that's where we leave it. It was kind of an exciting Bible study this morning, as we talked about the seas and the shipwreck and what's going to happen to Paul next. Well, we're going to find out not completely. It doesn't follow the rest of his life. It does follow the next part as we end the book of Acts and complete our Bible study for this time. So we'll see you next week, next Wednesday, as we finish our Bible study. Until then, I hope that you will consider coming to be with us on Sunday mornings at 9:30 here at Salem Cache United Methodist Church in Findlay, Ohio. On the 25th of July coming up, we have our chicken dinner, our barbecue chicken dinner. We put out make a big barbecue outside, and we cook hundreds of halves of chicken and all sorts of wonderful potato salad and stuff to eat. So I think there's the cost of that meal's $10, but looking forward to having just a really good barbecue meal. And we're doing it two ways. We're doing it once through drive-through there in the eaves under the drive-through of the church. You see on our picture here that, oops, on the picture there's kind of a place to drive through, and that's where we'll be giving out the drive-through. But we also have the fellowship hall open, and you can eat here as well because if you are totally vaccinated, you will eat here and fellowship together as well. So looking forward to all of that. May God bless you this week as you continue to have a wonderful day, and may God bless you in it. See you soon.